During the samurai era of Japanese feudal history, the main component of armies found on the battlefield were not the samurai but the Ashigaru, or the infantry. Conscripted from those with a lower social status than the samurai, they made up around 90 to 95% of most forces. At that time in history, Japan followed the Confucius system. Basically, your importance in society was reflected in your status. At the very top of society, of course, were the samurai and the samurai class. And beneath them were the peasants, and they made the things that were necessary for life to continue existing, so food, basically. The peasant class mostly consisted of farmers and fishermen. And beneath the peasants were the craftsmen, and of course the craftsmen made things, and that was anything that was necessary in society, so it could be guns, it could be armour, it could be anything. And then finally, at the very bottom of society in the system, and not outside of society, but at the bottom of society, were the merchants, and all they did was sell other people's things. So they sold what the craftsmen made, and they sold what the peasants produced. So when the call for battle went out, and people were conscripted into the military, of course, those at the bottom of society, the merchants, were the first to be conscripted, then followed by the craftsmen, who are of course very useful to bring on the campaign drill for running repairs, etc. And finally, the peasants. But as they were not professional soldiers, the Ashigaru being conscripted in the large part, there were some professional soldiers, the quality of the troops varied widely. And before the introduction of the gun, it was very, very hard to actually train these troops. Finding time to make them strong enough to wield a spear and close combat weapons, or accurate when using a bow, was not always possible. And so it meant that numbers of troops was very, very important at the time. However, with the introduction of the firearm with an external firing mechanism, as you can see here, the lethality of the troops increased and the training time decreased. Troops could now actually stand off and engage the enemy. They didn't have to get close with spears. And although these hinawaju, which is a Japanese matchlock, fired a lot slower than the archers would, the penetration value of the shot was exceptional. In most cases, they could easily shoot through any kind of armour, and they could also shoot the beasts of war, the cavalry. And then with the application of better battlefield tactics, this slow firing was increased by using rotating fire. So within around 20 years of this kind of firearm being introduced to Japan, most armies were carrying them as they were much, much easier to use and much more lethal than what they had used previously. Now occasionally we get comments on this channel and on our other social media that say the samurai never used firearms themselves, it was only the infantry, and that firearms were dishonourable, but this is not really the case. It was a samurai known as Tanegashima Tokitaka who introduced the gun widely to Japan, and then some particularly powerful and influential samurai such as Tokugawa Ieyasu and Oda Nobunaga. They saw the potential for the firearm on the battlefield and started developing better tactics and strategies to deploy infantry with these kind of weapons. Of course, that meant guns had to be made, so the samurai ordered guns into production. Then the infantry had to be trained, so the samurai trained them to use guns. And finally, they had to be led, so samurai with guns used their greater courage and skill to set a good example for the gunners that they were leading on the battlefield. And that's what's happening in the example now in the upload. The gunnery captain, who is not in the shot, has ordered his people into a different formation so they could start conducting rotating fire. It can take around about 30 seconds to load and aim one of these weapons properly, and then of course during the stress of battle this is even going to be even more difficult. So in order to compensate for this, two things need to happen. First of all, you need to speed up the loading time. This can be done by splitting the teppotai, or the platoon, or whatever you want to call it, into 3 ranks, and whilst the front rank fires, the second and third rank can start getting themselves ready. In this example, everyone's getting ready at the same time, but then they start loading and aiming separately. However, one disadvantage of this is that when you do split the unit up, it means you're reducing the amount of fire going forward, so instead of everyone firing at the same time, you've only got 1/3 of your force firing. For this reason, it's important then to make sure that the team all shoot at the same time. So the front rank all shoot at the same time. You don't have ripple fire, you have volley fire. So you should be able to see that the second rank has just moved forward to take position, and the first rank, which has retreated to the back, and the middle rank are still preparing their weapons, getting ready for the next volley. So as opposed to taking 30 seconds or possibly even longer, it's really reduced the time quite considerably. This tactic was most notably used in 1575 at the Battle of Nagashino, where the Oda Nobunaga's force and his alliance managed to overcome Takeda Katsuyori's cavalry force and defeat them. The battle really displayed just how lethal the Ashigaru had become on the battlefield and how strategy and tactics had changed in only around 20 years. Now, where you can see we only have matchlock gunners deployed here, historically it would have been more accurate to have supporting troops along with the gunners. So there would have been a covering force of people with spears, and you also had normally archers integrated into the force as well. Now we're coming up to the final volley of the rotating fire, and what happens after this is the captain will then order the troops into a new formation so that they can do a full volley with all of them. A full volley like that is known as a dairen. The smaller volley, or the ripple fire, is known as a shoren. And now that all the ammunition has been depleted, the captain has called them back into the rear formation, and he will now march them off of the display area. I hope you've enjoyed this short upload touching on the infantry in the feudal Japan. If you did enjoy it, then don't forget to check us out on social media. You can find us at Gun Samurai on Instagram and TikTok, and you can also find us on Facebook as the Matsumoto Castle Gun Corps. Please don't forget to like and subscribe as well, because it really does help the channel grow. And if you have any comments or questions, just leave them in the comment box below. I try to answer as many of them as I can. It's just about to become the rainy season here in Japan, so we won't be doing any uploads for a little while. Nevertheless, we hope to see you again soon on our channel.
Hey!